Hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing well. It's been a whole month now that I've been stuck here in Taiwan. I was originally supposed to be in Japan, but it has closed its borders. But I cannot complain because things so far are fine here, doing well. I can still go out. Yeah. Nonetheless, all my plans for 2020 have now been canceled. Luckily, I'm doing okay because I have DC Music School, which allows me to survive. But unfortunately for a lot of my colleagues, it's not the case. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Despite losing a significant chunk of my income, I'm still doing okay. Again, thanks to DC Music School. This summer, I was supposed to have a 3-week tour with Tchavolo Schmitt in North America, Northeast USA, New England area, and in all the Canadian jazz festivals, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. All of those are gone. And then I was supposed to travel to France to do the Reinhardt family camp with David Reinhardt, Django's grandson. And then I was supposed to play with Jimmy Rosenberg at the Django Reinhardt festival. All that canceled. So and then all my recording projects, Homestay students, everything canceled. So now 2020 is empty for me, and that's fine. It is what it is. I want to talk to you about some of my colleagues who are not doing as well. Some better than others and some much worse than others. And without going into details, I just want to tell you that some people in the gypsy jazz community, well, many have lost all their like me, they've lost all their gigs. And for many in the gypsy community, the Sindhi community, playing concerts was their only way of making money. So you can see how badly that affects them. Some have even reached out to me for ideas on what to do. And one in particular, my friend Benji Winterstein from France, a rhythm guitar player, was asking me about helping him organize like online lessons because he didn't know how to do it. So I came up with the idea to organize a private YouTube live session for him. And it worked out really well. There were a few kinks, some issues that I had to sort out, technical issues, because I had never done this before. But it gave me the idea to maybe do this with other artists. And since then, many artists reached out to me. And right now, the tentative plan is to organize private Q&A, question and answer, and live concert sessions online with artists such as Jimmy Rosenberg, Bireli Lagrene, Tchavolo Schmitt, Angelo Debarre, Rocky Gresset, Adrien Moignard, and there will be others as well. So if this is something that interests you, please reach out to me. My email address is going to be written here somewhere on the screen, mrdmmc@gmail.com. So this coming Sunday, April 26th at 5:30 p.m. Amsterdam time or Paris time, 11:30 a.m. New York time, 8:30 a.m. Los Angeles time, or 12:30 a.m. Tokyo time, that would be the 27th. I'm organizing such a session with the one and only Mr. Jimmy Rosenberg. I have not fixed dates for every artist yet, but the next fixed date would be with Rocky Gresset on May 2nd, and we'll have to determine the time, but it will be roughly around the same time. So May 2nd. So once again, be sure to let me know if it interests you at my email address. And most of the money will go to the artists. Furthermore, depending on the number of participants, if we have enough participants, I'll take just a little bit extra money to transcribe what I think are the coolest lines or the coolest ideas and have them up on Soundslice permanently. Likewise, if you join in on the live stream fun, you can also always watch it in the future for as long as my YouTube channel exists. These artists could really use your help, so like if you're a fan of them, please consider joining in on the fun, or at least sharing this news with people who might be interested. Furthermore, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite festivals, which is called Django in June, which is held in Northampton, Massachusetts in the USA every year in the month of June. It's run by my good friend Andrew Lawrence, who I think is one of the most passionate organizers for this kind of festival. He had to cancel his event, and I know he lost quite a lot of money. There's a GoFundMe thing going on that lasts until the end of April, but I would also like to contribute some of my earnings to this GoFundMe pledge, because I know he lost a lot of money, and we all of us, but it would be a really big shame if he couldn't run this festival next year, so I'd like to help him out. For some reason, if you want to support me, you can buy something at the DC Music School website, or you can check out my beginner gypsy jazz lessons on Soundslice. I'll have the links for everything in the description box, so be sure to check that out. I recorded an album with Jimmy Rosenberg last year, and you can buy the digital version of this album on Bandcamp. And here's just a clip of me and Jimmy jamming during the recording session. definitely, if you're a fan of Jimmy Rosenberg, please be sure to tune in tomorrow, Sunday, April 26th, to check out the private event. So while these events are not necessarily workshops per se, they're more like private concerts, you can still ask questions, and I'll try to choose the ones that I think are most relevant. Last but not least, I'd also like to talk to you about how to learn from these artists, or just from great musicians in general. I've been seeing it very often lately on internet forums, or YouTube comments, social media comments. There are some people, a minority of people, who get extremely hostile, like really aggressive, emotional, that they get upset that people would even dare try to learn like from artists like Bireli, Lagrene, or Jimmy Rosenberg. Their argument is that you will never be like them. And you know what? That's true. You never will be like Jimmy. You never will be like Bireli. We can only be ourselves. But to say that we can't learn from them, that is absolute, utter nonsense. These people are committing their own musical suicide. That's fine. But they're also acting as gatekeepers. And that's not cool. The truth is, I guarantee you, you can learn from anyone, no matter your level. There are just a few conditions that need to be met, and they're not difficult to achieve. Before I even talk about that, one important thing that I always talk about is the importance of community, especially in a style like gypsy jazz, or even jazz in general. There's a reason why in cities like New York, Paris, New Orleans, just to give you an example, there's a strong jazz scene. Like in Paris, you have a lot of great modern jazz, but you also have lots of amazing gypsy jazz players. In New York, it's pretty much like the capital of contemporary jazz. New Orleans, you have all these traditional jazz players. And not just jazz, you go to Nashville, USA, and you have all these killer country players. So why is that? It's because of community. All these people are living in the same area, and they're influencing each other. Personally, when I was starting out with this so-called gypsy jazz in Montreal, there was only one guy playing it. And I went to see him every single Sunday because he had this weekly gig in a cafe on Sunday afternoons. I remember one summer, I think I went every single Sunday for that summer just to watch him play, just to hear the tunes and to learn from him just by watching and listening. And Sébastien Gignot, one of the best players in the style today, told me the same story when he was in Paris starting out. Every opportunity he could, he went to see live concerts. He went to see Angelo Debarre anytime he could, Tchavolo, Schmitt, and sometimes eventually he befriended them, started talking to them, hanging out with them, and sometimes they would ask him to sit in. And this is so important. It's not just about locking yourself up in your room with YouTube, which is a great thing, but go out there and meet the people. So while these events that I'm organizing isn't the real thing, it's still better than nothing. And if you can, I really suggest that you come and hang out, chat, and ask questions, and just watch them play and absorb what you can. Now, a lot of these players that I work with in the gypsy jazz style, they learn music through intuition and sheer natural talent. Of course, they spend hours practicing, but what I mean is that they know very little theory. They know very little about what they're doing in technical terms. They couldn't explain to you why they do this or that. Some players have no idea what a major scale is, what a pentatonic scale is, what a C major chord is. Rocky Gresset, I remember rehearsing with him once with Cha Limburger on bass, actually. It was in Wales. And Cha told Rocky, yeah, it's an E minor chord. And Rocky was just completely confused. What's an E minor chord? Until I did this. And then suddenly Rocky did his, a line. He heard it and then, oh yeah, okay. He has no name for E minor. But he hears E minor, he knows it, he can reproduce it, and then he can hear lines. For players like this, and it's the same for like Jimmy Rosenberg, Rocky Gresset, Tchavolo, Schmitt, all these players, some know more than others, that's for sure. But all these players, their understanding of music is something that they develop naturally without having any words to describe anything. It's kind of like back in the day when very few people went to school and very few people learned to read or write, but could speak a language fluently and even really, really well in certain cases. So it's possible to be very fluent in a language without knowing anything about the grammar. And musically, it's the same thing with such players. With such players, you can't ask them about 2-5-1. You can't ask them about arpeggios or scales. They don't know what it means. Such words mean absolutely nothing to them. But if you were to play them like a chord progression, they would hear it and they would be able to reproduce it. Not only reproduce it, but they'd be able to come up with beautiful improvisations on those chord progressions. They had an innate talent for careful listening and were able to naturally absorb what they heard and manipulate these things. In fact, I suggest you watch one of my previous YouTube videos. I forget the title, but I'll have it written somewhere here and you'll have the link in the description. In this video, I explain in detail how a lot of these players learned. Now, that said, just because it's the way these players learn doesn't mean you have to learn this way. It's not for everyone. Everyone learns differently. The point I want to make, though, is that while you can have a traditional lesson with them where you ask them about practice routine or scales or arpeggios to use over X or Y progression, you can still actually learn from them. And how do you do that? Like I said earlier, you have to acquire certain skills that will allow you to learn from them. Again, everyone learns differently, but like some of these skills would include a basic knowledge of music theory, the ability to figure out music by ear, even if it takes you like a long time. Like if I were to play this, how long would it take you to figure this out by ear without looking at my fretboard? And if it takes you 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. As long as you can do it, then that's one skill that you need to have. And that skill can be trained. As far as the guitar is concerned, or certain visual instruments, the ability to observe and reproduce as well. Let's say your ears are not as good, but you see my fingers here. This is the 9th fret. If you can see which fingers are using and you can put your fingers in the same spot and you can reproduce it, that's a very useful skill, and it's actually one of the skills that a lot of these gypsy musicians use to learn the guitar. These are the conditions that you need to be able to learn from anyone. And the more you develop these skills, the more you'll be able to learn from the advanced players. It definitely takes a lot of work to bring this skill level up to a certain level, but I guarantee you it's doable. Furthermore, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's really a lifestyle. That's why I wear this shirt, Live the Life. Even if you're not a technically proficient player, you can even learn from the most technical players out there. One of the most common arguments people use when they watch a video of Bireli Lagrene, they will say, who's going to learn from Bireli anyway? The lines are impossible to play. No human can play them. Well, that's not true. There are some people who are really technically gifted who can actually technically reproduce what Bireli played, but that's beyond the point. My point is, let's say you have an A7 chord and you hear Bireli do something like, right? I played that pretty fast. And okay, you can slow down the music and then you figure out the notes. And you realize, oh, Bireli's playing in a B flat minor 6 arpeggio over an A7 chord. Well, if you're not technically proficient like Bireli is, you don't have to play that exact line. You can just take a B flat minor 6 arpeggio. And there, you have learned from Bireli. You took the concept. And that's what matters the most in my opinion. It's not to reproduce exactly what they do, but to understand what is going on and then to make it into your own style. And here's the thing, you don't even have to know the exact theory behind this. I can tell you it's from the altered scale, but you don't even have to know that. Like I said, if you have basic theory of knowledge of theory, like simple arpeggios, simple scales, then you can definitely recognize that this was a B flat minor 6 arpeggio. And if you know the song, like it was over, you know that it's over A7, and you can just tell yourself, oh cool, I can play a B flat minor arpeggio over A7. That's it. And that's why I say you can learn from anyone, and it's really true. Don't let the gatekeepers get in the way of your musical education. I strongly, now, yes, some people are more talented than others. That's just the way it is. That said, all these talented players put in the hours as well. They practice really, really hard. The point that I want to make is that with hard work, we all have potential for growth, definitely. And I've seen it. I've been teaching this style of music around the world. If you include workshops, I must have taught like over 1,000 people. And over the years, I've seen people progress tremendously. I knew Amati Schmitt, Dorado Schmitt's youngest son, when he was just a little boy. And I remember one of the first times I saw him play, it wasn't good at all. Like, it was quite bad. This 2 years later, after practicing 10 hours a day for 2-3 years, he was suddenly a whole other player. There are a lot of players like this that I knew since they were kids, and I saw them progress. We all have the ability to improve our situation. And if you're a beginner, if you acquire these skills that I talk about, which I can talk about in another video, then I guarantee you can learn from anyone. So let me end this video with a clip from the Jimmy Rosenberg album, which you can buy on Bandcamp. Thank you very much.